Hey you, it's true. With a first look at the new and upcoming Earth SSR duo Frankenstein and Mary, a nice nod by Sixer, by the way, to the original author of Frankenstein, Mary Shelley. Both of them have some guard skills and some other premier features, some quite enjoyable skill animations, as you will see, and speeds that I would call average at this point of 404. Error not found. Let's kick it off with Frankenstein's first active skill called Sister Strike. Gives 1 spirit, costs 50 time units and deals 100% damage to one enemy. However, it deals 600% damage if her Mary counterpart is in the ally team. So that means she doesn't even need to be on the battlefield. If there is a Mary somewhere on the battlefield or in the reinforcements, this skill will deal 600% right away. Except high damage for low time units and Spirit Plus. This skill doesn't do much though, as you can tell from the description, only being 3 lines long. With the next one it gets a bit longer. We have Protective Sister. Again 50 time units, but this time giving 3 spirit. And this active skill makes Frankenstein a guardian for 100 time units with 50% damage reduction from attacks. However, this one is only usable if Mary is among allies on the battlefield. So both Frankenstein and Mary need to be present for the Protective Sister skill to be available. The same is true for the next skill, Energy Infusion. It is an instant skill and gives no spirit, but also costs no spirit, and immediately gives Mary the next turn, purifies them and grants them a power charge. What can Mary do with that power charge? We will see that a bit later. This skill becomes locked for 150 time units after use. Which is slightly on the longer side, I feel, but fair is fair. I mean, it is a gift turn. Purify with a power charge on top. No spirit generated though. And as we said, it's only usable if there is a Mary. Otherwise, half of her skill set kind of falls flat. Which leads us to the last skill, which of course has to be a skill that gives us this Mary. So far, we haven't seen yet how she comes about. She needs to use an active skill. It is not a passive skill that conjures Mary. It is the active skill. It's alive. Also 0 spirit cost. So this might be the first fully fledged SSR that does not have any spirit cost in her whole skill set. 2 0 spirit skills and 2 skills that are spirit generating. Mary will make up for that though, as you will see, a little bit. But yeah, quite impressive, and again, just 50 time units, so none of her skills take longer than 50 TU. And in this case, the 50 time units is actually only of importance if you have already run out of reinforcements and have an empty spot on the battlefield, because this skill, called It's Alive, adds Mary to the next in line of allied reinforcements. In terms of stats, Mary will be a total clone of Frankenstein. And if 4 allies are on the battlefield, Frankenstein will exchange herself with Mary. And this skill kind of has a triple lock on it. It is of course only usable if there is no Mary already around somewhere in your team, including reinforcements. It gets a 100 time unit lock after being used, so it can only be used every 100 time units. Given the other time units of Frankenstein, you can already see that a TU reduction weapon on Frankenstein might not be the best idea for optimal skill cycling. And similar to Musashi's Glacial Slash, this skill is only usable 10 times per battle. That is the total battle. It will not reset even if Frankenstein dies and is revived, which can of course happen, as we will see moving on through these skill sets. First, Pulling the Strings, the first passive of Frankenstein. She has a hold ground, so any attack that would defeat her or a status effect that would defeat her, she will survive with 1 HP. And if she enters the battlefield from reinforcements, if Mary is already there, Mary will immediately get the next turn and will be purified. Now the next passive skill, Sister Substitute, brings something to the table that we already saw in Cleopatra's Soul Substitute. If there is a Mary among allies on the battlefield, an attack that would normally kill Frankenstein will instead heal her to 100% and Mary will be sacrificed instead. But the first half of her passive here is actually even more interesting. This unit is the very first SSR that has a permanent sleep immunity. This unit cannot fall asleep, period. Of course, this is a direct nerf to any and all sleep units. And this kind of style, of course, is a buff to the more generalist DPS that do not rely on any status effects on enemy units. And it doesn't even end there. If Mary is on the battlefield with her as well, she is also stun immune and cannot be defeated by non-attack damage, which includes poison and burn, of course. So that's a massive shift, of course. Let's see how this will influence the game. But let's move on to Mary first, after we heard so many things about her. What can she do? Her passive skills mirror Frankenstein's to a degree. Here we have pulled strings in this case. Mary also comes with a hold ground. And if Frankenstein is somewhere on the team, including reinforcements, she will have a light speed entry, so immediately get to turn when she gets on the battlefield. And if Frankenstein is not among allies on the battlefield, she will become a guardian. This effect will be lost if an ally Frankenstein enters the battlefield. This guardian mechanic might make it more rare to see both Mary and Frankenstein on the battlefield at the same time. But yeah, it remains to be seen the exact interplay of the AI units with this kind of style. The fun thing is, it doesn't even end there, because independent of her entry, if Frankenstein is not among allies on the battlefield, she basically gets the King's Dawn that we saw from King Arthur. Her attack is increased by 50%, she has 50% damage reductions from attack, and her time unit cost is reduced by 50%. On top of all that, the Mary Unstoppable passive also mirrors Frankenstein's a little bit in that she has a permanent stun immunity. And here again it gets interesting, because if Frankenstein is among allies on the battlefield, she also gets the sleep immunity that Frankenstein has. So if Frankenstein and Mary are on the battlefield at the same time, both of them will be permanently stun immune and sleep immune, which is something that was never here before. Do note though that here in this passive there is no mention of poison or burn. Mary is definitely a unit that is weak to those kinds of status effects. What can she do though when she gets the turn so fast and possibly has the King's Dawn passive basically on her side? At first it's a bit of a deja vu, because her first skill, like Frankenstein's, is also Sister Strike, and this is exactly the same. 1 spirit plus, 50 time unit costs, 100% damage to one enemy, but 600% damage if Frankenstein is an ally on the team, but including reinforcements. So that could quite possibly be a 900% damage skill right off the bat, with 0 downside and possibly 25 time unit cost. Now in general, Mary is more DPS focused than Frankenstein, but also has more spirit cost, as we can see on the next one that is called Doll Harvest. 2 spirit cost, 100 time units, and this one deals 600% damage to 2 enemies, ignoring damage reduction effects. So it is a rate attack, it fully heals both her and also Frankenstein if she is on the battlefield. And Mary also gains a power charge. Now that is already the second skill where we saw her gain a power charge. Let's see what she can do with that. The Doll Harvest can only be used if Mary is desperate, so if she is below 50% of max HP, or if Frankenstein is among allies on the battlefield. Now the next skill will finally make use of the power charge. Maximum output, costs 3 spirit, 130 time units, and deals 600% damage to all enemies. It consumes the power charge, is only usable if she has a power charge of course, and it ignores counter stance, skin passive skills and enemy damage reduction effects. This could be huge of course, because quite possibly this is the first skill where we can reasonably expect a damage of total 3600% being dealt if she is enraged, and that possibly for just 65 time units, and also ignoring damage reduction effects, so quite possibly putting the whole enemy team at least to hold ground. But before we go to the final active skill of these two SSRs, that is also one thing to point out already: no execute skill in this skill set. Because the last and final active skill is called Mary's Monster. This time costs 2 spirit and sacrifices Mary to revive Frankenstein to the battlefield with full HP. Again, this skill, similar to the It's Alive skill, can only be used if there is no Frankenstein anywhere in your team already. The revived Frankenstein will be considered a conjured unit, and what this also means is that skills like Water Anya's Cursed Sleep Entry will not trigger when these two cycle in and out of the battlefield. Now that's the whole skill set of Frankenstein and Mary. Quite a lot to take in, I have to say, and it is really difficult to already make a judgment on this unit. A few things already come to mind. One is there is no awakening scaling in her passives and her actives, except for the stat boost, of course. So I think might yet again be a unit that is interesting to get at least one copy of, especially because of her guardian side of the skill set. But on the other side, that is also a reason why you might wanna fully awaken her. After all, more HP and also more DPS, especially interesting for Mary. What's also nice there is, with the number of executes that we currently have in play, such a revival unit, so to speak, is always interesting, because if you take out one of Mary or Frankenstein, the other one might actually be able to quickly revive the other. They did put a 10 limit on Frankenstein's It's Alive skill, so that this has no potential to become an endless circle, but 10 times is still a lot. And you also have to think about both of them bringing potentially sleep immunity to the battlefield for the very first time. However, these two are a bit weaker to poison or also burn. Burn also because of the elemental disadvantage of Earth. Frankenstein and Mary work pretty status independent. They are more like supports for each other, but also give a lot of utility to your team because of their guardian features. And because of their immunities, I could actually see them work in a lot of different teams, despite the disadvantage of having no execute skills in their entire skill set. I think for this unit it will be very important to check how her AI behaves on the battlefield. Also keep in mind that Lucky Fountain returns next week before her banner ends, which is why I would encourage you to wait with summoning. And until then, you will also be able to watch some high-level arena footage of Frankenstein and Mary on this channel, and also my summon or skip review, where we will go in more detail for whom I would recommend to summon Frankenstein and Mary. Thanks to Helios for providing the skill animations shown in this video. Like this video if you enjoyed, and as always, thanks for watching.